The cake hit Jordan square in the chest, a fluffy explosion of vanilla buttercream and crimson berries splattering across his favorite blue button-down like shrapnel from a broken dream. Carson's hand trembled, the empty plate clattering to the hardwood floor of their Seattle loft, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the sudden silence. "You're killing us, Jordan. Killing everything we built," he spat, his voice cracking not with anger, but with the hollow ache of a man watching his world dissolve in sugar and regret. Jordan stood frozen in the kitchen archway, the city lights of Capitol Hill twinkling mockingly through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, as if the skyline itself were laughing at their unraveling. At 34, he was the softer counterpoint to Carson's sharp edges, lean and boyish with sun-kissed blonde hair that fell in effortless waves, his green eyes usually sparkling with that easy charm that had first drawn Carson in during a rain-soaked coffee run 5 years ago. They had built this life together in the shadow of the Space Needle, two graphic designers scraping by in the gig economy, their marriage a quiet rebellion against the conservative roots they'd both fled. Carson from the dusty plains of Montana, where his father's belt had taught him to hide his heart. Jordan from the sterile suburbs of Chicago, where coming out had meant losing a sister he still texted on birthdays but never saw. Their wedding had been a rooftop affair under drizzling skies, vows exchanged with craft beers in hand, promising to weather the storms side by side. But tonight, over a stack of overdue bills fanned across the reclaimed wood table like a losing poker hand, the storm had broken inside. It started innocently enough, or as innocent as these fights ever got. Carson had come home late from a freelance pitch in Belltown, his laptop bag slung over one shoulder, carrying the cake from that overpriced bakery on Pike Street as a peace offering. He'd been pulling double shifts editing logos for tech startups, his eyes burning from screen glare, while Jordan had been buried in his own illustrations for an indie comic run. The rent was due, $2, $800 for their 800-square-foot haven overlooking the Puget Sound, and the latest statement from their shared credit card had landed like a sucker punch, $1,200 in charges. Not for groceries or gas, but for dinners out, Ubers to gallery openings. That impulse buy leather jacket Jordan swore would pay for itself in confidence. Carson had stared at the numbers, his pulse thundering in his ears, the weight of it all crashing down. The student loans still haunting them from design school. The emergency fund they dipped into last winter when Carson's appendix decided to rupture on Christmas Eve. "You're the one who said we needed to live a little," Jordan had shot back when Carson waved the bill like a red flag, his voice laced with that defensive lilt that always made Carson's stomach twist. "Not just survive like we're in some goddamn Depression-era novel. We're married, Carson. We're supposed to be partners, not accountants." "Partners don't hide receipts," Carson had growled, slamming the paper down, his Montana drawl slipping through the cracks of his polished Seattle accent. "You think I don't see it? The way you swipe that card like it's a magic wand, pretending we're not one bad client away from couch surfing with your old roommate in Fremont." The words had escalated, barbs flying sharper than the rain lashing the windows. Jordan accused Carson of being a control freak, of smothering their spark with his endless spreadsheets. Carson hurled back that Jordan was a dreamer too lost in his sketches to face reality. And then, in a blur of frustration, Carson had grabbed the cake, meant for their anniversary makeup dinner, now a weapon, and hurled it. Not hard, not to hurt, but enough to mark territory, to make Jordan feel the sticky mess of their mistakes. Now, as the frosting dripped down Jordan's shirt in slow, accusatory rivulets, he didn't yell, didn't shove back. He just looked at Carson with those eyes that had once mapped constellations in the dark of their first apartment, and something shifted. A quiet resolve settled over him, like the calm before a fairy horn cuts through the fog. Jordan peeled off his ruined shirt with deliberate slowness, letting it fall to the floor in a wet heap, revealing the lean muscles of his torso, the faint tattoo of a compass rose on his ribcage that Carson had traced with his fingers on lazy Sundays. Naked from the waist up, he stepped forward, close enough that Carson could smell the vanilla on his skin, mixed with the faint citrus of his cologne. "You want to know what this feels like?" Jordan whispered, his voice steady, not a tremor. He reached past Carson to the fruit bowl on the counter, plucking a single ripe strawberry, the last remnant of the cake's garnish, and held it between them like an offering. Then, without breaking eye contact, he crushed it in his fist, the juice staining his palm red, trickling down his wrist like blood from a fresh wound. "This. Every time you look at me like I'm the problem. Like our love is just another line item to balance." Carson's breath hitched, the fight draining from him like air from a punctured tire. He opened his mouth to apologize, to pull Jordan into the hug that always mended them, but Jordan held up his stained hand, silencing him. No, not tonight. Tonight, you listen. And with that, Jordan turned, grabbing his keys from the hook by the door, his bare back a canvas of unspoken hurts as he walked out into the relentless Seattle drizzle, leaving Carson alone with the wreckage of their kitchen and the echo of a door that clicked shut too softly to be final, but heavy enough to haunt. The loft felt cavernous without him, the hum of the fridge the only soundtrack to Carson's unraveling. He sank to the floor amid the debris, knees drawn up, head in hands, the scar on his cheek itching like a reminder of the bar fight back in Missoula that had taught him violence solved nothing, except now he'd wielded it in the one place it could destroy him most. How had they gotten here? 5 years ago, Jordan had been the light in Carson's gray world, the guy who laughed at his bad puns and kissed him fierce under the aurora borealis they'd chased to Alaska on a whim. They'd eloped in a courthouse with rainbow flags fluttering outside, then thrown a potluck reception in a Ballard Park, toasting with PBRs to a future unbound by bloodlines or bigotry. But the city had a way of grinding dreams into pixels. Carson's freelance gigs had dried up after the last recession scare, forcing him into corporate drudgery, tweaking fonts for banks that funded pipelines through sacred lands. Jordan, ever the artist, chased whims. A mural for a queer youth center here, a zine launch there, each one beautiful but broke. The bills piled up like unread emails, and resentment festered quiet at first, then loud in the spaces between their touches. Sex had become a band-aid, quick and mechanical, lacking the poetry of their early days when they'd fuck on the fire escape, city lights blurring below. Carson pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Jordan's contact. My compass, my home, but no call came. Instead, he scrolled through photos. Them at Pride, rainbow face paint smeared from kisses. Jordan sketching Carson's profile during a ferry ride to Bainbridge. The two of them curled on this very floor, building forts from couch cushions after a fight over nothing. Tears blurred the screen, hot and unbidden. By midnight, exhaustion claimed him, sleep a fitful tangle on the rug, dreams haunted by strawberry stains and slamming doors. Morning broke gray and sodden, the kind of Seattle autumn that seeped into bones. Carson woke to the scent of cold coffee and regret, his body stiff from the floor. The kitchen was untouched, a crime scene of their collapse. Plate shards glinting like accusations, frosting smeared across cabinets like abstract art gone wrong. He cleaned mechanically, scrubbing until his knuckles bled raw, as if erasing the mess could rewind the night. Work emails pinged, another revision request from the faceless client in Silicon Valley, but he ignored them, driving instead to Jordan's studio in Pioneer Square, a converted warehouse space cluttered with easels and half-finished canvases depicting queer icons in urban grit. The door was unlocked, a bad habit Jordan never broke, and Carson slipped inside, heart pounding. Jordan was there, cross-legged on a drop cloth, brush in hand, painting over a massive canvas of two men entwined against a stormy skyline, clearly them, idealized and unbroken. He didn't look up as Carson entered, but his shoulders tensed, the stroke of his brush faltering. Jordan, Carson started, voice rough from disuse. Last night, I don't know what came over me. The stress, the money. It's not an excuse. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Jordan set the brush down, wiping his hands on his jeans, the strawberry stain faded but still faintly pink on his skin. He turned then, his green eyes unreadable, not angry but distant, like fog rolling in off the sound. Sorry doesn't fix the plate, Carson. Or the shirt, or the way you've been looking at me like I'm a liability. You're not, Carson pleaded, stepping closer, the air thick with turpentine and tension. You're everything. I panicked. We can figure this out, budget apps, side hustles, whatever. Just come home. For a long moment, Jordan studied him, the silence stretching like taffy. Then, slowly, he stood, crossing the room to a small wooden box on his workbench, the one that held their wedding rings when they weren't wearing them during paint sessions. He opened it, pulling out not the bands, but a folded letter, yellowed at the edges, addressed in Carson's own handwriting from 8 years ago, before they'd even met. No, wait, that wasn't right. It was a letter Jordan had written to himself during his coming-out fallout, a manifesto of self-love scrawled in marker on notebook paper. I kept this, Jordan said softly, unfolding it. Read it. Out loud. Carson's hands shook as he took it, the words blurring at first. I am enough. My heart is not a debt to be paid, but a fire to be tended. I deserve a love that sees me, not tallies me. The list went on. Affirmations born from pain, a shield against the world that had once called him unnatural. As Carson read, his voice breaking on the final line, I will walk away from anything that dims my light. Jordan watched, tears glistening but unshed. That's what you did last night, Jordan said when he finished. You dimmed us. And I can't. I won't let that be our story anymore. The words landed like a second cake, sweeter and more shattering. Carson reached for him, but Jordan stepped back, not in rejection, but in reclamation. I need space, Carson. Not forever, but enough to remember who I am without the weight of us crushing it. Stay here if you want, paint with me, or go, but don't push. Carson nodded, throat tight, the studio's exposed brick walls closing in like judgment. He left the letter on the workbench, a fragile bridge, and drove home through traffic-clogged streets, the radio droning indie folk about lost loves and rainy roads. The loft echoed emptier now, Jordan's sketchbooks stacked like ghosts on the coffee table. Carson poured a whiskey, neat, from the bottle they'd bought on their honeymoon in Portland, and sat by the window, watching ferries slice the water, pondering if love was a debt or a gift, and whether he could learn to give without tallying the cost. Days blurred into a haze of routine laced with ache. Carson threw himself into work, pitching a bold rebrand for a local nonprofit aiding LGBTQ+ youth, channeling his turmoil into designs that screamed resilience, bold colors against grayscale backdrops, symbols of unbroken circles. Jordan texted sporadically, picked up milk, your turn for takeout, or saw that mural on First Avenue, reminded me of us. Neutral missives that kept the door ajar, but the heart guarded. Carson replied with care, no please, just shared links to funny cat videos or articles on sustainable living, tiny threads weaving them back. One evening, after a client call that ended in a rare win, a contract that padded their account by $5,000, Carson stopped at the bakery, buying not cake, but croissants, flaky and unassuming. He found Jordan at home, sprawled on the couch with a tablet, sketching concepts for a graphic novel about queer outlaws in the Old West. The air smelled of sage from the smudge stick Jordan burned to clear the vibes. Peace offering, Carson said, holding out the bag. No strings, just butter and apologies. Jordan eyed him, a ghost of a smile tugging his lips. You hate croissants. Too French. I hate a lot of things. Learning to live with them. Carson sat at the far end of the couch, space between them like a buffer zone. They ate in companionable quiet at first, crumbs scattering like confetti, then talked. Really talked. For the first time in weeks. About the bill, yes, but deeper. Carson's fear of failure rooted in his father's bankruptcy, the way it made him cling to control, Jordan's guilt over his frivolity, a mask for the abandonment wounds that made him spin to feel seen. As night deepened, the conversation turned intimate, hands brushing accidentally, then intentionally, fingers interlacing over the armrest. I miss you, Carson admitted, voice low. Not just the sex or the routines. The way you make me feel. Possible. Jordan leaned in, forehead to forehead, breath mingling. Then show me. Not with words or pastries. With trust. Their kiss started tentative, a question, then deepened into answer, slow, exploratory, tongues tracing apologies. Clothes shed in a trail to the bedroom, bodies rediscovering rhythms long neglected. Carson's hands mapping Jordan's back like braille, Jordan's nails digging crescents into Carson's hips, gasps echoing off the rain-streaked glass. It wasn't fireworks, but a steady burn, healing the fissures with heat and heartbeat. But peace, in their world, was fragile as Puget fog. 2 weeks later, during a rare date night at a dimly lit bistro in Queen, and Carson's phone buzzed with a notification from their bank app. Another charge, $800 to a hotel in downtown. His blood ran cold, fork pausing midair. Jordan was across from him, laughing at a story about a client's disastrous photo shoot, oblivious. Or was he? Who's Ethan? Carson asked later that night. Back in the loft, the app opened on his phone like evidence in a trial. The name had popped up in the transaction details. Ethan Hale, a mutual friend from design school, now a photographer who'd crashed their wedding with a drone shot no one asked for. Jordan's face paled, the post-dinner glow fading. It's not. Carson, listen. It was one night. After you threw the cake. I was wrecked, went to that bar in Capitol Hill, and he was there. Comfort. That's all. A mistake. The word mistake hung between them, heavier than any bill. Betrayal bloomed in Carson's chest, sharp as the scar on his cheek. A knife twist of not just the act, but the secrecy, the fracture in the trust they'd rebuilt so tentatively. One night, he echoed, voice flat, while I was scrubbing frosting off the walls, begging the universe for a second chance. And you chose him. Jordan reached out, but Carson recoiled, the room spinning. I was angry, hurt. It didn't mean anything. Everything means something. Carson cut in, grabbing his jacket. You wrote it yourself. I deserve a love that sees me. Well, so do I. And this is blindness. He stormed out into the night, the door slamming this time. A thunderclap that shook the foundations. The streets of Seattle swallowed him, neon signs blurring through tears. Open 24/7. Come as you are. He walked aimlessly, ending up at Gasworks Park, the old gasification plant's skeletal towers looming like accusations under the moon. There, on a bench overlooking the dark water, he broke, sobs racking his frame, the kind that hollowed you out and left echoes. Betrayal wasn't the sex. It was the confirmation of his deepest fear, that he wasn't enough, that love, for men like him, always came with an expiration stamped in fine print. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Tom lost shape. His phone lit up with Jordan's texts. Please come home. Let me explain. I love you. Only you. Carson silenced it, pocketing the device, and hailed a rideshare to his old crash pad in Ballard, a sublet from a former colleague that smelled of stale takeout and solitude. He crashed on the futon, sleep evading him, mind replaying the bistro laugh, the hotel charge, the cake splatter, symbols of a marriage marinated in good intentions gone sour. Dawn found him hollow-eyed, nursing coffee black as his mood. Work was impossible. He called in sick, then drove to the waterfront, watching container ships unload their burdens while he carried his own. Memories assaulted him. Jordan's hand in his at their first Pride March, chanting against the hate that had chased them both from hometowns. The quiet nights when depression clawed at Carson's edges, and Jordan would hum old folk tunes until the darkness receded. Was it all facade? Or could love weather this, too? By afternoon, resolve hardened. He texted Jordan, meet me at the studio. We talk or we end it. No emojis, no softness, just the raw edge of finality. The warehouse door creaked open to Jordan waiting, paint-splattered overalls hugging his frame, eyes red-rimmed like he'd cried rivers. No words at first. They circled each other like wary animals, the air thick with unsaid accusations. I slept with him, Jordan confessed first, voice cracking. Twice, actually. After the cake, and once more last week when you were pulling away again. It was escape, Carson. From the fights, from feeling like a burden. But it gutted me every time. I hate myself for it. Carson's fists clenched, knuckles white. And I hate that I drove you there. But hate doesn't erase it. How do we rebuild on lies? We don't, Jordan said, stepping closer, vulnerability etched in every line. We start over. Therapy, couples, individual. I go, you go, we go together. And I quit the bar scene. Focus on us. But only if you can forgive. Not forget, but forgive. The plea hung, a lifeline tossed into churning waters. Carson thought of his father's end. Divorce papers signed in a trailer park, love discarded like yesterday's news. He thought of the youth center pitch, kids like young Carson, needing stories of loves that lasted. Forgiveness isn't a switch, he said finally. It's a choice, every damn day. But for you, for us, I'll try. They embraced then, tentative, bodies fitting like puzzle pieces weathered by storm. No passion yet, just the quiet anchor of presence. Outside, rain pattered on the tin roof, a baptism for what came next. The weeks that followed were a gauntlet, raw and revealing. Therapy sessions in a cozy office overlooking Lake Union became their confessional. Dr. Reyes, a no-nonsense Latino with a voice like warm gravel, peeling back layers of Carson's control issues and Jordan's avoidance. Carson journaled furiously, pages filled with Montana memories. The ranch hand who'd kissed him at 16, only to deny it come morning. The church sermons branding him sinner. Jordan sketched their pain, abstract swirls of red and blue clashing, then merging into rainbows fractured but whole. Money troubles lingered, a specter at every meal, but they tackled it head-on. Joint budgeting nights with takeout pho and shared screens, celebrating small wins like paying off a card with high-fives that lingered into kisses. Carson's nonprofit gig blossomed into a full campaign, billboards of diverse couples dotting the city, a mirror to their mending. Jordan landed a book deal for his graphic novel, illustrations of queer resilience that Carson proofed late into nights, their collaboration a bridge over old chasms. Intimacy returned in fits and starts, a hand on the small of the back during walks in Discovery Park, where evergreens whispered forgiveness, slow dances in the kitchen to Nina Simone records, bodies swaying to rhythms of rediscovery. Sex, when it reignited, was reverent, exploring scars both visible and not, whispers of "I see you" amid gasps and grips. Yet crisis loomed, unbidden. One crisp November evening, as they prepped for a gallery showing of Jordan's work, Carson's phone rang. His mother, voice frail from Bozeman. "Your father's gone, son. Heart attack in the fields. Come home." The call fractured something deep, pulling Carson back to the planes he'd buried. Jordan drove him to the airport, hand tight in his, promising, "I'll be here when you land. We face this together." Montana was a time warp. Golden aspens shedding leaves like regrets, the family ranch sagging under debt and dust. Carson's mother, Elena, gaunt and graying, clung to him in the kitchen where suppers once masked silences. His brother, Tate, sullen and straight-laced, eyed him warily. Brought the city boy? But Jordan, arriving a day later via red-eye, disarmed with pies from a local diner and stories of their Seattle life, humanizing the other in their father's rigid world. The funeral was a sparse affair under overcast skies, eulogies laced with half-truths about the man who'd beaten queerness out of Carson with words if not fists. Standing by the grave, dirt clumping under boots, Carson felt the old rage bubble. "You never saw me, Dad. Never tried." But Jordan's arm around his waist grounded him, a silent vow. "I do. I will." Back in the guest room that night, with the house creaking like ghosts, Carson unraveled. "He hated me," he sobbed into Jordan's chest. "For who I am. For loving you." Jordan held him fierce, fingers threading hair. He was scared, baby, of his own shadows. "But you're free now. And I'm here, loving every stubborn, brilliant inch of you." The flight home was cathartic, tears drying into resolve. Carson sold off his inheritance, a few acres he'd never claim, funneling it into their emergency fund, a gesture of release. In Seattle, they hosted a memorial of their own. Friends gathered in the loft, toasting not loss, but legacy. Carson's designs projected on the wall, Jordan's sketches framing tales of chosen family. Winter deepened, holidays a test of tenderness. Christmas Eve, snow dusting the sound like powdered sugar, they exchanged gifts wrapped in newsprint. Carson a leather-bound sketchbook etched with "To My Fire." Jordan a custom watch inscribed "Time with You." Under the tree, a scraggly fur from a queen and lot. They made love by firelight, bodies a testament to survival, every touch a defiance of fractures. Spring brought renewal. Jordan's book launch at a packed Elliott Bay Books. Carson beaming from the front row as readers queued for signings. Whispers of "This Is Us" in every page. Carson's career peaked with an award for the youth campaign, a gala where he dedicated it to the loves that heal what families break. Yet the true climax came unannounced, on a humid July eve during Seattle's fleeting summer. A storm rolled in off the Pacific, thunder rumbling like unresolved thunder. They argued, foolish, over a forgotten anniversary dinner reservation, old habits clawing back. Words escalated. Carson accusing Jordan of drifting into late-night studio sessions that smelled of avoidance. Jordan snapping that Carson's success made him distant, a star burning too bright to touch. In the heat, Carson grabbed a glass from the counter, water sloshing, and dashed it against the wall, shards flying like accusations. Jordan flinched, eyes wide with echo of the cake night, and in that instant, Carson saw it. The cycle, unbroken, threatening to drown them again. He dropped to his knees amid the glass, palms cut but ignored. "Stop," he begged, voice raw. "This is us destroying us. I can't. I won't. Let fear win." Jordan knelt too, glass crunching, pulling Carson close. "Then let's end it," he whispered. "The fear. Here. Now." They cried then, a monsoon of release, holding each other as lightning forked the sky. No sex, no words, just presence, the storm outside mirroring the one quelled within. Dawn broke clear, and with it, a pact. Weekly check-ins, no matter how small, a shared journal for gratitudes, vowing to call pause before tempers tipped. The healing stretched into fall, a tapestry woven from threads of therapy breakthroughs and mundane miracles. Picnics in Green Lake, where Jordan sketched ducks while Carson read poetry aloud. Volunteering at the youth center, mentoring kids with stories of stumbles turned strides. Carson's scar faded under Jordan's kisses. Jordan's compass tattoo gained a twin on Carson's wrist, inked during a spontaneous trip to Portland. By October's end, as leaves turned the parks to fire, they stood on their balcony, arms entwined, watching the Space Needle pulse against twilight. "We almost lost this," Carson murmured, nuzzling Jordan's neck. "We did," Jordan replied, turning to cup his face. "But we chose each other. Every shattered plate, every stolen night, every storm. That's our story, not perfect, but ours. Human. Whole." Carson kissed him then, slow and sure, the city sprawling below like a canvas of possibilities. In the quiet after, with Jordan's head on his shoulder, Carson felt it. Not just love, but grace, the kind that mends without erasing scars, that teaches two men from fractured pasts to build a future unbroken. And in that grace, they found their peace, not silence, but the profound hush of hearts aligned, ready for whatever rains might come.